Apyayantu mamangani vakpranashchakshushrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranam Astvanirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So yesterday we started out by providing in session 1 a general overview of the 6 schools of philosophy, and the purpose of that was to give you some context. Where does Advaita Vedanta fit, and what is so special about Advaita Vedanta? Because after all, there are many schools that are saying with authoritative language what is the nature of reality, and who you are, and what is the purpose of life, and what happens after death. But Vedanta has the exact same authoritative view, and so you come to kind of ask, how is Vedanta any better? And we generally pointed out, especially if you study the 6 schools of philosophy, you will see that the advantage that Vedanta has is that it looks at all of these other philosophies and it finds some loopholes, finds some logical inconsistencies, and then it brings those out and say, therefore, it doesn't make sense, because you can kind of break that logic using a different view. And we said that Vedanta generally, not generally, but it talks about 2 specific realities, 2 realities that need to be brought out. In fact, someone who's coming into Vedanta for the first time, they will be exposed to these 2 realities for the first time ever. They may have heard of them before, but when they come to the class, the teacher's job is to help them understand. And what is it that they understand? Well, first of all, the conscious subject, that is the subject who is the conscious entity, you, the one that's always present, always true. And you can never be the object, because if you were the object is something that changes. The object is like this one moment, the object is like that next moment. But there is an underlying sameness throughout the changes. And that sameness, that underlying sameness, is the conscious subject, in whose presence the different objects are coming and going, coming and going. Your emotions are coming, the next emotion is going, then the next thought comes, that thought leaves, replaced by a new thought, that thought leaves, a concern comes, that concern comes, goes away, some joyful thought comes, then you're happy, right? Your body goes through happiness, that too leaves, but there is one underlying conscious presence that is in and through all of that. So this was a general pointer of what Vedanta wants to show you. In this session, we will go into more detail to point out directly what is this conscious I. And the second was the cause of the universe, which is not within time and space, but is the truth of time and space. And the cause of the universe is all knowledge and all power. And why is it called all knowledge and all power? Because everything in the universe is connected. The sun is connected to the trees are connected to the photosynthesis. The photosynthesis uses the sun energy to convert that heat into chemical energy, which feeds nourishes the plant then nourishes the animals, and the animals build nests in the trees. And the sun has connection to, for example, the water evaporates, goes into the clouds, and then the clouds blow by the power of the wind, and those clouds send that water to far outlands, to the far reaches of outlands, where that water falls onto the ground, onto the mountains. And as that water falls onto the mountains, that water reaches, and as it reaches the ocean, along the way, how much rivers does it create? Many. And those rivers further provide life forms for thousands of species, upon which they can sort of settle themselves around that river and build communities. And so like this, if you start to see everything as an interconnected order, you see that therefore it must have been created by one unit, by one intelligence, which knows about the sun, which knows about the rains, which knows about the digestion, how to digest those plants in your stomach, which knows about how to excrete that food out, and then knows about how to keep the cells healthy when a cell breaks down. Do you do any part in repairing that cell? No, that cell goes into auto repair mode. The intelligence for that cell to start repairing is already built in. You do none of it. Digestion, we just swallow. That's all we do. Yum, 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 yum. Swallow food. From then on, the whole process of digestion and taking the nutrients out, taking the water, separating the water from the food, and delivering that to the right faculties within your body. And like this, for 80 years, it keeps on doing this every single day. You don't do any of that work except just breathe. And breathing itself, the lungs have certain sacs which are able to absorb the oxygen, and that oxygen gets distributed throughout your body. And you just, therefore, breathe, do what you have to do while this complex mechanism is working 24/7 behind the scenes. And this complex mechanism is not just an independent unit. It is connected to everything else in this world, like air, like warmth, like seasons, like food. If you go to and you start to eat different kinds of food that is not correct for your local region, you eat some summer food in winter, already your body starts to show certain signs of incompatibility. So like this, you can see when you connect the whole universe together, it has to be one cause, one universal cause, which knows about all things, your body, the sun, the clouds, the rains, the evaporation, seasons, how far the earth needs to be away from the sun. All of that needs to work 24/7. How many kilometers is earth away from the sun? It doesn't matter how many, it is a lot. Look at this. The sun rotates around, the earth rotates around the sun constantly, okay? Not for a moment does the earth ever come closer or farther away from the sun. Could you do this? We're talking about celestial bodies, the sun and the earth, constantly, not one bit closer or farther, constant orbit around the sun. This is intelligence. So we want to show you that this cause of the universe isn't just some belief like, oh, where is this cause? Just by observing, you see there is intelligence in all things without which they cannot function. Because if you look at any unit in this universe, it is nothing but intelligence organizing itself to create the leaf. The leaf is organizing itself to sort of evolve and distribute and create more cells. If you've ever seen a single cell under a microscope, what happens? The cell is there. The cell multiplies into 2, into 8, into 16, into 32. Who is doing that? The sperm cell. It knows where to go. It knows where to find the egg. It doesn't just sort of creepy crawl all over the place and get lost. It knows where to target and therefore to bind with the female and therefore to start to create that fetus and zygote. All of this is going on without any intervention. Therefore, the cause of the universe, we say, is Sarvajna Sarva Shaktiman. Sarvajna means all knowledge. That means there's no knowledge that is outside of it. It is all knowledge. We only have limited knowledge. We only have limited knowledge. What kind of limited knowledge? Well, when you get born, how much do you know except to breathe? We don't even know how to walk. Basics. Don't even know how to say mommy. We have to learn. This one, mommy. And then you just repeat mommy. So we learn every single life from the mere basics. But what you don't learn are two things. Number one, how to basically continue and survive as a mechanism. And number two, what is right and wrong. These two come inbuilt. You don't have to learn, I don't want to hurt myself. You also don't have to learn, I don't want to hurt another person. This comes inbuilt in all beings. And therefore, there's a natural kind of an empathy that goes on between the human species. Now you say, well, if that is the case, if we all come ingrained with dharma, with what is right and wrong, then why do we still conduct things that are kind of off and suspicious and fishy and not right? It's very simple, because even though we all come with this program of what is right and wrong and righteousness, you also have your own personal values that you get born with. For example, there's a mom and a dad fighting because they've got some domestic issues. And the child, being like a sponge, observes this and says, so if my mom and dad, who are God to me, if they are, the way they communicate is through fighting and through kind of shouting and, doing something that looks like that, then that means love. So later on, when the child grows up into an adult, then they express love through dominating. They express love through kind of, cheating or manipulating. And it becomes a, quote, normal thing. It doesn't even get questioned. So the reason why we're able to override this natural program of what is right and wrong is because your own personal values override universal values. And personal values usually tend to win out because it gives you instant gratification versus something that gives me delayed gratification. This is why it is very hard for most to do the right thing, because it's sort of the rewards are in the future and I have to wait, whereas the rewards of doing what I want to do are right now. Therefore, the person chooses to do what is pleasant right now. So, conscious subject and cause of the universe. And then we just use the basic example of what this conscious subject is, and then we'll go on to the second session, revision, is that if I show you, for example, right, you have to wait, right, for my phone to be revealed, right? You have to wait for the phone. So you have to wait for, right, whatever, the cup or anything. You have to actually wait for that. But if I ask you the question, right, how long do you need to wait to know that you are? How long do you need to wait to know that I am? Right? Just no philosophy now, like who's this I am? None of that. Just ordinary, down-to-earth I am. How long? Not at all. In other words, you don't need senses to know that you are. Everything else in the universe, including your own hand, where is your hand? Well, it's not here. Now it's here. But you know that you are irrespective of not seeing your hand. So everything in the universe, as we will soon see, requires me to objectify it through my senses. The only principle that doesn't require objectification is this I am. Okay. Then we moved on to session 2, and we talked about what this verse means. And we basically, the focus was, what does your mind consist of? Because your mind is like an instrument. And this instrument can, of course, be used in a wise or an unwise manner. It's entirely up to you. In fact, the reason why it is an entirely fair system is because everyone is equally given the chance to observe what kind of effects does your action have. No one is denied that. Everyone who puts an action into the field will get some response, and you're given a chance to feel into that response and then see, is this response conducive to my peace? Is it conducive to my growth? Conducive to what is important for me? If yes, then it gives you feedback that whatever you did was indeed conducive for your growth. If the answer is no, that means you can change your response until you start getting reactions or effects which are conducive for what is it that you want to do. So in this sense, this order is entirely fair. To say that God is unfair would imply that God is sort of, denying you from learning what is right or appropriate and inappropriate. But no one is denied what is appropriate and inappropriate. However, you can still override it by saying, I choose not to learn from this. This is, just another little thing. I'm going to just do it one more time. You can do that too, but then you will keep on getting results over and over and over again until it gets so painful that it's just simply not possible to keep on skipping it. This is how Ishvara system works. It says, my dear child, it's okay. I will let you off 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Every single extra time I let you off, it becomes harder to do it again, until eventually the person says, I can't do this anymore. So this means even if you don't want to grow, Ishvara forces you to grow. That is how the setup is made. That's just how it is. Therefore, we don't have to wait to be forced to grow. You can make that conscious decision and grow on your own accord whenever you want. Okay. Then we said the mind. Your mind, again, consists of 4 basic instruments. The first is, if I ask you, why are you able to emote? Why is it that you're able to feel that emotional satisfaction or discontent? This is because there is a mechanism in your mind which allows that to happen in response to whatever happens to you, to your instrument. If something pleasant, conducive to your survival happens, then an emotion will be keeping with that event. And thereby you can tell, aha, this is indeed something that I can work with, something that I can bring more into my life. We said that this mind also, part of the emotional system, is what kind of vacillates left and right. And it goes from, should I do this? Should I go to this guru? Should I go to that guru? Is this the right teaching? Is that the right teaching? Who's the right guru? They're not the right guru. Da-da-da-da. It just keeps on going. So this means the person is still identified strongly with that vacillating part of their mind. So what happens? You have to collapse that and eventually say, let me make a decision. Let me collect the right amount of information and make a decision for a while, invest myself, commit myself for 30 days or whatever, 7 days, and then see what I get out of it. Just this small step is not easy. Person can come to a seminar 1 or 2 days, only when the teacher is just beginning to warm up or whatever, something like that. And they walk out. And the teaching hasn't even begun. In other words, the vacillation has gone left and right. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I stay? No, I'm going to go. But there is a consequence. So either way, you then, Ishvara then offers you a new chance to find something else until eventually you got no choice and you come back eventually to Advaita Vedanta. I've seen it happen over and over again. The person doesn't know what they want to do. They keep on going away. One person actually, when I began teaching this, they saw me, they were a little bit inspired, and they said, I'm going to India. That's the first thing they said. Like, I'm going to go to India and find the real guru. 1 year later, 1 year and a half later, after we've been teaching the Gita for a year and a half later, he emails me and says, what if this Sat Chit, what if this reality is all fake? What if there's no such thing as Sat Chit or this reality? And I said to him, look, I was teaching this for the last 1.5 years. You ran off to India, finding your guru. Nothing happened. And now you're asking me this question. What if this is all fake? Could I have stopped you? No. This is the kind of result that you have for kind of going away. So it's so tempting to see someone and go, oh, they're inspiring. Let me go and find the teacher now, the real teacher. In fact, the Upanishads here at the end will have the exact same scenario happen to one of the students who will ask the guru a question. Now that the Upanishads is finished, when does the real teaching begin, teacher? When is the real teaching beginning? And the teacher says, you've just been taught the whole thing. You've just been taught by the teacher and the whole thing. And you're asking, when is the real teaching beginning? So it shows you that the mind is living in a personal bubble, looking for some bigger thing out there. What's in front of it, it cannot see. It's always living, it has to be something better. It has to be an Indian, it has to be a Western, it has to be a beer, it has to be older, it has to be younger, it has to be like this, it has to be like that. Thousands of bubbles, snakes the person is carrying, and they need to be all popped one by one because they are keeping the individual from really just settling down and seeing what's in front is the real teaching. So there was the manas, and then we had the buddhi, which is what basically thinks. We had the chittam, which is what helps you to recall, and we had the ahamkara. The aham, we said, is no problem. There's no problem with the I. What the confusion comes is when you take that I to be the kara. So aham, I, kara, dur. So the ignorance, the confusion for everyone is when they take this dur, walker, thinker, inquirer, cooker, sleeper, waker, they take that one to be the aham. That's where the confusion comes. And we said the ahamkara is nothing right or wrong about it. It's just one of the 4 systems that allows you to individuate your experience just to you. When you're hungry, you go and feed this instrument, not some other instrument. It's that which isolates your experience to a single individual, and it's very much needed. If you take the ahamkara out, it's as good as being on LSD. You don't know what is what. Am I now touching the table? Am I touching you? Am I touching myself? It's all just one. You can't operate like this. So therefore, there is nothing wrong, nor is there anything about destroying the ahamkara or getting rid of the ahamkara. This is still pseudo-spiritual language, destroying the ego. Not ever do we say that in here, because it's just one of the 4 functions. Okay. Now, the Kena Upanishad, verse 1, will begin. And before I get into it, I just want to preface. See, the Upanishads teaches in a dialogue form. And dialogue form is basically between the student and the teacher. Dialogue means is that there's a conversation taking place because it's natural. This is how we learn, through a conversation. And we've got different Upanishads, and they're all basically dialogue form. Like Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is between Yajnavalkya, the husband, and Maitreyi, the wife. And then we got Katha Upanishad, which is between Lord Yama teaching 11-year-old boy. Imagine that, you're 11 years old and you're hearing this knowledge. Anyone who was 11 interested in this? Nachiketa, 11 years old, asking the highest questions possible that a person who's only 60 or 70 would take an interest in. And then we have a Mundaka Upanishad, which is between father and son. This is amazing. The father is teaching, or the son is actually open to listen to the father. So this is always, exactly right, this is always a dialogue form between them. And Kena Upanishad, what we're studying, the word Kena is instrumental, means by whom. It's just it's a question. It's like saying by whom Upanishad. So we will see why it means by whom or by which Upanishad. Kena Upanishad has no author, and this is interesting because it reminds us that there is no ownership to this knowledge. It is something that is seen by the seers. For example, Einstein, which we all know him, he kind of saw through some information he collected, and he saw a certain reality about energy and matter, that you can convert them using a certain formula. You can get great amount of energy out of a small amount of matter, which is how we created the atom bomb. And he didn't kind of invent that, he just discovered what was already in potential. It was already there. You just had to kind of extract it from all knowledge, all power. We have Kekule. Kekule, few of us know him, but he is he had a dream, and he had dreamt of a coiled serpent. And that coiled serpent was what a benzene molecule looks like, because the chemists were trying to discover what is a benzene. Every molecule has a structure to it. And you cannot do much to a molecule until you know the structure. So Kekule had a dream of a coiled serpent, and that let him know, so the benzene molecule is a ring structure. He woke up and he took this to the lab, and through this they were able to decipher what the benzene molecule was, and thereby create medicines and plastics. So it turned out to be a very useful discovery. Or we had Isaac Newton. So he, like anyone, he observed some invisible force pulling an object downwards, not up, not sideways, and thereby he inferred, therefore there must be some force that I don't see, and yet in the presence of that force, it always pulls objects downwards. And therefore he then gave it a name, gravity. So it's not like gravity didn't exist before, he just gave a name to something that already is. Just like Ishvara, it's not something that's kind of like, whoa, Ishvara, where's Ishvara? It's just a name for all knowledge, all power, which connects all things together. Or consciousness, it's just a name for something that can be directly observed or known in your own experience. So I want us to be very kind of careful here. I'm going to show us some names. And you're going to say, what about this? And what about so many names? They're just names meant to show you different aspects of what is. Remember, Vedanta is all about here and now. And this here and now has to be communicated in a way that you can relate with it. And thereby, we create names. Okay. Therefore, Upanishads is nothing but, in short summary, knowledge of the seers. Knowledge of the seers. It's not knowledge of individual men. It's knowledge of the seers who have collaborated their data and saw there are certain consistencies in what we saw. And these consistencies we cannot contradict. Thereby, they have then written this oral text down into an Upanishad. Okay. Verse 1. Om Kena Ishitam Patati Preshitam Manaha. Kena Pranaha Pratamaha Praiti Yuktaha. Kena Ishitam Vacham Imam Vadanti. Chakshuhu Shrotram Ka Udevaha Yunakti. So this question, it is a verse made up of questions, and it is asked by a boy, a very smart boy, and his questions kind of like are over the head for most. And let's see what he says. He says, Kena Ishitam Patati Preshitam Manaha. Willed by whom or in whose presence does your mind fall on a given object? So in whose presence does your mind constantly fall on different objects and play with different thoughts and play with different emotions? In whom does that happen? Who is this being that is there by whose presence the mind is able to think, the mind is able to imagine, the mind is able to remember? In other words, every mind is thinking, okay? And the boy is asking, what specifically allows my mind to think? Never mind that the mind is thinking, but what is it that lets this mind think? What kind of gives it permission? What makes it possible for the mind to think? And then Kena Pranaha Pratama Praiti Yuktaha. So again, in whose presence do these physiological functions work? Your digestion, your circulation, high blood pressure, low blood pressure. In whose presence is this working? Like, who is this being in whom this body experiences warmth or coldness? Kena Ishitam Vacham Imam Vadanti. So again, we all have faculty for speech, and it's used differently. But what impels your speech to be used differently? You say, well, my own free will. But the boy is not asking about free will. The boy is asking, what is it that allows free will to even exist? Who created the principle of free will? You see the difference between a question? The boy is not asking, what is it that makes my mind think? Well, the answer is, your own choices. But the boy is not asking that. He's asking, what even created the mind that thinks? What created the principle that can choose one over another? Who is this creator which has designed this amazing instrument that's able to remember, that's able to emote, and have the right corresponding emotions when certain things happen to it? Chakshuhu Shrotram Ka Udevaha Yunakti. So Yunakti. So what unites my eyes, my ears, my prana? What unites it all? What is it making? What makes it all work in harmony? All work together, all able to communicate together. Could you put your body together? No one can put their body together. We're only beginning to discover the body. How much knowledge is there just for a single eye? How many years do you study? 15 years for an ophthalmologist. Just the eye. Never mind everything else. Who created this eye? How come it's so complex, so sensitive, able to pick up subtle lights and represent that world in this mind? It's amazing. Okay? So since the day we are born, what happens? We start using our eyes, we start using our ears, tongue, tasting different objects, hearing different sounds, using the mind to think, to remember. And we all say, yeah, this is what I'm remembering, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing. But the boy is not asking that. The boy is asking, what created the senses? Who thought of 5 senses? Why not 6 senses? Why not 7 senses? Why 5 fingers? Why not 6 fingers? 5 toes? Why not 7 toes? Why do we all have a face? Why do we have a nose here and a mouth here and 2 eyes? Why not 3 eyes? Why not 1 ear? Why is the ear pointed like this and not like forward? The boy wants to know, how did all this come together? Do we even ask these questions in school? Well, maybe we do, but then what happens? We get shut down. What is this? Go do your homework. Shut up. We come from a shut up parampara. Close your mouth. Go do your homework. And then the boy or the girl learns to not ask anymore. And there's nobody to answer this because nobody else knows. They were also shut down. Therefore, these questions remain unanswered. And this boy, being privileged, he's able to ask this. And therefore, these questions remain unanswered. Why? Because focus is on forms constantly. What is in my mind, what I'm thinking, what I'm not thinking, what is to be done tomorrow. Constantly, all life, mind is on forms. And the boy is now asking, what created this instrument that's able to do such amazing complex calculations and remember and recall? Not what I remember, what I recall, but what created the recalling ability, remembering ability. Okay? So now go into a little bit more detail. Both questions here, all of the questions are basically saying, what is behind the mind? What is behind the senses? And then that statement is qualified by 2 words, ishitam. Ishitam. In other words, willed by whom? So what the boy recognizes is there is some presence which doesn't interfere, and yet in the presence of it, your mind is able to will its own decisions, is able to decide its own decisions. But your mind cannot do it outside that presence. So there is some presence that you are yet to discover. And in that presence, your mind is able to choose what it wants to do, is able to think, is able to see. But that presence doesn't interfere with the mind. We don't know what this is, the boy is asking. Like a metaphor, maybe. Imagine a king. In the presence of the king, there is a kingdom. And the king doesn't directly interfere with the kingdom. He's just being the king. In the presence of the kingdom functions. It does what it does. The king doesn't sort of say, you do this, you do that. He's just being himself. He's just being the king or the queen. And because of that, a vast kingdom is able to function. And then, preshitam. Prompted or directed by whom? So this is a different question. The first is willed by whom. This is prompted or directed by whom. In other words, this suggests there's a more active principle making you think the way that you're thinking. Kind of like paper filings. You know, you take a magnet and you have paper filings, and then you move this magnet underneath, and all the paper filings are standing now vertical. Before, they were all horizontal. You put the magnet, they're all vertical, and they're all dancing, jiggling, thinking, oh, I'm doing this, I'm jiggling. And yet, they are kind of helped, they're aided by some force that's making them stay alive, making them stay vertical and jiggle. And they think I am doing this entirely under my control. And yet there is a much larger force that is causing them to move like this. Okay? So the second question implies there's a more active intelligence or more active principle. And the first one, pre-ishitam, implies there is a presence, but it doesn't interfere at all. And yet in its presence, the paper filings are able to dance. And the second, pre-ishitam, there is something that is making you dance. That means it's more involved in your livelihood, in your decision making, in your life, in your breathing. So we don't know what this is so far. We're getting there. Okay? So again, to simplify these two questions, the first is, what is it that is behind your mind? Behind your thoughts? Not what is your thought. Everyone knows what your thought is. But what is behind your thought that you cannot see? And the second is, whatever that which is behind, what is the nature of that which is behind? Yeah, okay. There could be something behind, I get that, but what is it that is behind? And what is my connection to that which is behind my mind that I cannot see? Okay? So to map this out quickly, what the verse wants to show is, we'll create a little framework, and we'll have the mind here, mind, and the five senses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So what, sight, hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting, right? And they're all, right? Your data is going inside your mind. So we all know what that data is because you're reporting it all your life long. We're all experts at that. Okay? Now the question is not within the scope. The question is outside the scope. What is it that is outside your mind? So is there a presence in whose presence, without directly interfering with this mind, it lets the mind do what it does. It lets the senses do what they do. And if there is a presence, what is the nature of that presence? Is it interfering with my mind? Is it sort of just letting my mind think? Thereby, these two questions are now being answered. And the whole Kena Upanishad will answer these two questions. So the next verse will basically expound the whole vision of Vedanta and provide you what the teacher has to say. Okay? So it's not an easy thing to answer because it's like, what is behind my mind? What do you mean? Because all life we're accustomed to things in our minds, things of our thoughts. 1.2. Shrotrasya shrotram, that means the ear of the ear. Manasaha manaha, the mind of the mind. Yat vachaha ha vacham, the speech of the speech. Sa'u pranasya pranaha, the prana of the prana. Chakshuhu chakshuhu, chakshushaha chakshuhu, atimuchya, the eye of the eye. Dhiraha pretya asmat lokat amrta bhavanti. So statement, again, shrotrasya shrotram. So what the teacher says is that, so the teacher is now answering in 1.2. So he says, or maybe it's a she, we don't know, the ear behind your ear. Now, if you kind of take this literally, you start to imagine there's some imaginary ear, right, behind your ear. It's like it's somewhere. This is not what we're talking about because imagination is still within your mind. We're talking about that which is outside the mind. Okay? Manasaha manaha. So there is a mind behind your mind. The real mind. Which is enabling your mind to think, to emote, to calculate. And then vachaha ha vacham. There is a speech behind your speech. That means that which enables your speech to work. Pranasya pranaha. Again, there is a prana behind your prana. That means the prana that the doctor works with, there is a prana behind that which a doctor cannot work with because it is not within the scope of this model. So in one short statement, it's saying that in whose presence are all of these functions working without interfering with these functions. Okay. And what is this presence? This presence in Sanskrit we call it chit, C-I-T. And chit means, in English, we call it awareness or consciousness. And so let's just go through a quick kind of a direct experience to make this relatable. So if you look at your sounds, if you look at the sounds that are happening to you, you're from morning to evening, right? Even now I am communicating and you're hearing d, fr, n, d, s, au, u, n, d, s. Different sounds, all lifelong, are coming and going. And every sound that you hear, it's uncommon. Now the word uncommon simply means it is not like the previous sound. So there's not one sound, even if I go like this, exactly the same, there is a slight variation, maybe time-wise, maybe intensity, maybe loudness. There is slight variation between every sound. So the word for the two new words, or the word for now, which is uncommon, is asadharana. Asadharana. It means uncommon. Okay? So what uncommon really just means is your experiences are not common. When I say your experiences are not common, what does this mean? When your sound is not common, the sounds that you hear, it's not common at all. What does this mean? Someone?
It's all new.
It's all new. And okay, good. It's a brand new, fresh sound. Okay, anything else? The sound is uncommon. It's not heard very often. Yeah, so it's not constant in your experience. Okay? It is changing. It's constantly changing. For who hears here one single sound constantly? And if you do put your hand up, I would love to ask you, what sound are you hearing constantly? Any sound? Yeah. See, if it's complaints, right? Your complaint is very uncommon from the complaint yesterday. Okay? So in the presence of these uncommon sounds, there is some underlying substratum which remains constant, because of which these sounds are able to be recognized. Otherwise, if this presence, called awareness, was itself changing as often as the sounds were changing, then there will be no sense of continuity of constant sounds, because the awareness would be new all the time. It would have no relation, there will be no connection to the previous sound. In other words, what I want to say is, there is one presence, something about you, because of which changes of sounds are coming and going. If you, the recognizer, the revealer of those sounds were coming and going, then you couldn't, by definition, recognize sounds. Because you can only recognize changing in reference to non-changing. You can only tell that the train is moving because the surface of the earth is still, and you look outside the window. We can only tell that the earth is spinning in reference to the non-spinning sun. So just logically, just the fact that you're able to recognize sounds, there is something that reveals the sounds being recognized. That something is called awareness. Now, who is recognizing sounds? Your neighbor or you? You are. So this means if you're now forced to say I am, then this means that you, that I am, has to be that awareness. Okay? And then sight. Again, eyes constantly report different forms. Now let's do a little experiment, okay? I'm going to give you a little maths test. Again, let's do 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 10 plus 0 plus 1. Now you're watching that? Are you watching that process going on in your mind? Okay, so what has happened now? You were constantly, your mind was producing images, plus 1, 2, 3. But what was watching that entire experience? You're forced to answer, I am. That I am is awareness, chit, that is being spoken of in this verse. So the forms were uncommon, constantly changing. It doesn't matter what I said. I could say times divided by equals to. The point of the exercise was to recognize there was something about you that was still not moving at all, in whose presence these forms were moving and modifying. And then taste, touch, or smell. Again, how is your tongue capable of recognizing different tastes? Why is your tongue capable of recognizing different tastes? Because the tongue itself is not changing tastes. It's just one neutral tongue. In the midst of one neutral tongue, which doesn't have a taste of its own, it's able to recognize different tastes. If the tongue was salty, could you taste salty? If the tongue was sweet, the nature of the tongue was sweet, then by the time you put something salty on there, could you truly experience or taste the essence of saltiness? No. Why? Because the sweet tongue would be interfering with the saltiness. So this means the fact that you're able to clearly and distinctly make out saltiness from sweetness is because the tongue itself is neither salty nor sweet. So in that same way, the fact that you, this presence, are able to distinctly identify different sights, distinctly one from the other, different sounds, distinctly one from the other, different emotions, distinctly one from the other, different tastes and sensations, distinctly one from the other, means that you are free of whatever is being distinctly identified. You understand this so far? Or the eye. Look at the physical eye now. Why is the eye able to see colors? Because the eye itself doesn't have any intrinsic color onto it. If the eye was red, the nature of the eye was red, then could the eye see red? In fact, the eye will only be seeing red, right? But in that case, you couldn't see red because it's only seeing red. If the eye had an attribute, some kind of a thing about it, then when there is an opposing thing, it couldn't recognize that. If there's an opposing color, it couldn't recognize it because it's too busy being red. So in that same way, this awareness, because it doesn't have any intrinsic sounds or tastes or sights of its own, it's able to distinctly recognize individual tastes and experiences. Is this your experience in life? You're able to distinctly make out every experience. This from that. Why is that? Because awareness is neither this nor that. Therefore, it's able to distinctly point out this is different from that. In the presence of whom is that being identified? The verse says, in the presence of you, awareness. It's not because of your mind, because we can apply the same thing to your mind right now. Your mind goes through thoughts. It's kind of troubling thoughts. And then, for example, they play pranks, right? You know, you just won $1 million. Oh, I'm in bliss. No, you didn't. Look at that. From here to there. The mind just went through a whole image from one to the other. but in the presence of that which is neither elated, neither in a state of fall. And whatever that is called awareness, the constant substratum on which different phenomena take place. That which survives different, uncommon phenomena taking place. The existence upon which different phenomena, different experiences take place. And what is that which survives? It cannot be your mind. Why? Answer? That is changing. In other words, there is some surviving factor that is surviving the changes. And it cannot be your mind, because your mind has no connection now to yesterday. Yesterday we were kind of, nervous a little bit. We're getting together. Now maybe we're more relaxed. So everything about our emotional state and thoughts has changed. But there is one common presence in whom yesterday was identified and today is being identified right now. Okay, now, speaking of mind, look at this. If your senses are changing constantly, then where is that data going into? The mind. But the mind, so look at this. If the senses are changing and they're going inside the mind, then is the mind changing? Yes, because the senses are changing, the changes are going inside your mind, therefore the mind is also changing. But not only that, but your mind has those four functions. It's got its own stuff, its own stories that adds to the changes of the mind. It's got its own memories that adds to the changes of the mind. It's got its own calculations about how do I interpret this data that's coming into me from my eyes. That adds to the changes of the mind. It got its own emotions corresponding with all of the things that are going on in that mind. That adds to the changes, the uncommonalities of the mind. So what does this mean? Your mind is just the ultimate embodiment of uncommonness. Something that's completely uncommon from now to now to now to now to now. Total changes. They say 60,000 per day, 60,000 changes per day, which I think is much more, because just to move my eyes and sweep them from one room to the other, how many times has your mind changed? How many things have you seen? How many colors and details and shawls and hairs and walls and this and that and surfaces? Oh man, it's already 100,000 by now. So look at this. 100,000 times my mind is being changed right now. And yet, if you do the same experiment, do you feel like you've changed 100,000 times? So whatever hasn't changed, whatever when I say hasn't changed 100,000 times, is not the 100,000 times. It's not the mind. It is that which is you, awareness. So awareness, we have a word. So if uncommon is asadharana, then awareness, you just take that word a away, and you have sadharana, which is common. So this is a new word for awareness, that which is common throughout. What is the most common thing, the most common recognition? I am, I am, I am. Suppose the unchanging presence is in the uncommon category. Suppose awareness is in the uncommon category. Could changes be recognized? No, why not? This is what I really want to know. Someone brave, tell me. Speak up freely. Why not? If your awareness was changing, why could you not recognize changes?
Because changes take place in the mind.
They take place in the mind. Okay. Okay.
You need a stable factor to see the change.
Good. You need a stable factor to see the change. That is a very good answer. In other words, you need something that is not moving to recognize the changes of the moving. Okay. The question is then, how do we show how do we prove directly that this presence of awareness doesn't take on any thought onto itself or any emotion onto itself? How do we show that it is free of the changes that are going on? Would someone like to answer this? How do we demonstrate that this awareness, which we've now spoken of briefly, nothing sticks onto it? How do you demonstrate that?
The same presence, the same witnessing, silent.
The example you showed yesterday with the glass and then the different colored pencils.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. So yesterday, huh?
Otherwise it wouldn't make any new experience because it's already one experience and then the one on top of it would be colored by the
Super, super. So we went across the room and the answers got refined. So yeah, it's a great example. So again, this awareness is like this, right, glass. Not that awareness is something that you can see, but it's just a metaphor in this example. So the fact that you can display a new color and get rid of that color means that the awareness never got stuck with the previous attribute. If it got stuck, it could never identify the new color behind it. Okay? Like this, are you related to me? In other words, there's something about you that is always fresh to a new experience, that is always new and not carrying over what happened just a moment ago. Like right now, I am fresh to this. Right now, I'm fresh to this. So if that is true now, that implies that whatever happened in the past never became part of awareness. It never became intrinsic to awareness. And right now is nothing but the moment that's going to be in the future, because the future is nothing but now. When the future comes, it's going to be the now. So if I say now is not anything sticking onto me, then if I talk about the future, is it going to be any different? No, because now is nothing but the future from the standpoint of yesterday. So if nothing is sticking onto me, onto my awareness, in other words, if something were to stick onto your awareness, what would happen? You would see that all the time. But then if you see that all the time, I would have to ask you, what exactly do you see? And you'll be forced to answer me. Or what exactly do you feel about your awareness?
In this metaphor of the crystal clear water, could you say that if the mind was a glass of crystal water, that it will keep colors and experience, some residue is staying there?
Yeah. So in this example, the mind will keep some residue of what's going on, but at the same time, the mind's always free to mold itself over and over again. But it starts to kind of become a little bit rigid. The molding becomes rigid. It's less moldings because it's still holding on to the past moldings, the past habits. So the mind, the difference between the mind and awareness is mind is able to mold and never stays as one thing. So it's always free to change into something new. But awareness is exactly the same. It's always available to recognize a new change. However, the mind is changing. Awareness is not changing. So it's a close kind of a thing, but one is sadharana, one is asadharana. Okay? For example, a fragrance, right, became part of awareness. Suppose what kind of a fragrance? Cherry or blueberry? A strawberry. Go strawberry. And strawberry became fragrance, part of you. Then could you ever smell something else? No, because you would just be like this strawberry smell. Everything about you would be just strawberry. In other words, no smell stays, no sight stays, no sound stays. Why doesn't it stay? Because awareness is non-sticky. It's like Teflon. Nothing sticks onto your awareness. It is fresh, new, available to now, to now, to now, to now, to now. In other words, to yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now, if it's fresh to and nothing sticks onto it yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and you bring these 3 periods of time together, then look at this. How many yesterday, todays, and tomorrows do I have to stack together for suddenly awareness to take on some attribute, to take on some stickiness, for something to stick onto it? How many of those yesterday, todays, and tomorrows do I have to bunch together into a long string? When will I suddenly over there in the future or over there in the past go, once upon a time awareness was, sticking itself onto some attribute? How many of those do I have to stitch together? Infinite. Awareness will remain exactly without any smell, any taste, any touch. So this means even before your body was born. Your body was born once upon a time. Today, yesterday, your body was not there. It doesn't matter what happened in the period of time. Awareness never took on the birth of your body. So this means awareness was never born. What was born? Because to be born, if awareness was born, that's a change. That's a change in reference to your body. So awareness was exactly the same even before your own body was born. And your body was born in the presence of awareness, and thereby you find yourself now wearing this instrument, thinking, I am contaminated by my life struggles. I am contaminated by all of these attributes that are going on in my life. This is ignorance, where an individual assumes that I, awareness, have taken on different attributes of this body-mind, therefore it keeps on getting as though born. And yet, awareness remains equally free of the body, mind, all throughout. Okay, now let's analyze the verse and then we will take a break. Shrotrasya Shrotram. So, there is one presence that enables you to hear and thereby have different sounds be captured. And this awareness doesn't have any of its own sounds nor any of its own sights. And because it doesn't have any sights or sounds, it's able to identify different sights or sounds. Just like this glass doesn't have any color. Because it doesn't have any color, you can show it any new color and it's able to reveal that color behind without any color sticking onto it. So just the fact that your awareness is able to identify a new emotion, a new thought, means that the prior thought has not contaminated you.
Can you please repeat the last sentence again?
In the presence of one common presence, there is changes going on. If one of those changes became stuck onto awareness, then awareness will be carrying that forward into the future. So wherever you are in the future, from that moment on, you will always have that on you. And you could not see anything else except that. So just the fact that I'm able to reveal, new experiences can be revealed in the future, in the future, in the future, in the past, right now, means that at any moment, awareness, consciousness, you remain intrinsically free of all of the things that have happened to your body and your mind. So whatever your body and your mind has done belongs to the body and the mind. It doesn't belong to awareness. In other words, you, awareness, have never done anything good nor bad in your life. Your body has done it. Your mind has done it. Because if you, awareness, took on some pain from the past, some kind of something terrible, then that terribleness would be coloring in all of the joys in your life. And you could never experience one single joy in your life. And yet, you're able to experience joy in your life, which means nothing has ever contaminated you because you're always free to reveal whatever your body is presenting, whatever changes are happening on top of you awareness. There's a nice phrase that says, there is pain on me in one of the languages. There is sorrow on me. And this is just culture, and I thought this is so beautiful. It gives you some space to see, this is not mine. It is on me. Now Vedanta adds this me, defines it as consciousness, awareness, but there is pain on me. Tomorrow, what will be on me? No pain. Tomorrow, no pain on me. Next day, pain on me. Okay? And chakshuhu, in other words, to recognize different forms, awareness has to be free of those forms. If awareness was stuck to a single form, then where is that form? What form is it stuck to? Tell me. What form would you like to say that your awareness is stuck to? And by the time you say it, 5 minutes later, you've forgotten already. 5 minutes later, you're available to something new. Okay. So summary, there is one awareness, okay, which enables you, enables your mind, enables the experiences to take place. And this which enables experiences to take place, that is I am. Who is enabling experiences to take place? In whose presence are experiences taking place? In my presence. You're forced to say in my presence. It's not a philosophical question, it's just down to earth. That my, whatever that my is not the mind, because the mind is asadharana. It's no different between now and then, it's changing. And it's not the body, because your body today is totally different from yesterday. It looks the same, but over 900 million cells die, if I've researched this correctly, within every few minutes. 900 million cells die every few minutes. You cut the arm off, I am. I saw on YouTube just recently, there's a man whose arms have been cut off, amputated, and all the way up to the torso. So 2 arms off and to the torso. Person still enjoying his life, however he's enjoying his life, hasn't affected his I am. Okay? So this one presence enables all hearings to take place, all sounds to take place. Who's enabling all sounds and hearings to take place and tastes to take place? Who is that? I am. Am I talking about some philosophy out there? I'm talking about direct experience from every one of our standpoint. So therefore, this is not a belief. It's just something that is brought out by the Upanishads. And if I put my I am in the taste, in the sound, in the sensation, then naturally you miss out on the presence. Which is ironic, isn't it? The presence is revealing that which I'm putting my identity into, such as sadness, and yet, by not bringing out what this presence is, I miss out on the presence. So in other words, it's all about bringing it out. This is how the teaching takes place.
I'm a little bit confused. So most of the things are going to the Chittam now. Most of the things that we know are going to the Chittam. And sometimes we are aware of things that were in the Chittam.
Yeah, Chittam is memory. So even if there was... so you want to know about the memory and what relationship it has to awareness?
Yeah, because you say, I don't think about when I smell strawberry. I think it's the awareness. It's the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the Chittam.
Yeah, sure. So the discussion here is it can come from anywhere. It can come from the outside, but then it's gone. It can come from the memory, but then it's gone. But there is something underlining that is not gone. So I was there before the smell took place. The revealer of nothing was there before the smell took place. And the revealer, in the presence of the revealer, the smell or the Chittam, the memory is taking place. And when the memory is gone, who's still there? What is still there? The presence available to recognize a new Chittam, a new memory. Okay, I hope I'm getting your question right because I can see on your face.
New and old is a bit confusing.
Okay, so just see.
Memory is something old for me. So
Good. So memory just means it's changing.
yeah.
Okay. Now I remember my name. Okay, not my name. I now remember, my whatever I got to do for tomorrow. Now I don't, right? But there is something that's true throughout that. Now you say this is no big deal, Andre. This is like so. This is so whatever. It's just no big deal. It's not supposed to be a big deal. That's the point. The mind wants it to be a big deal. It wants to have this big kind of a celebration. Wow, I've just, kind of got exposed to the highest reality. It's supposed to be a big deal. Now, the mind, look at this. Before the mind heard this, what was there? The presence. Now the mind is going through this knowledge. It's coming inside the mind. The mind's going through its little changes. It's thinking, wow, it's no big deal. Who's still there? The revealer of the mind going, it's no big deal. When the mind has gone through its little shenanigans of wanting it to be a big deal, what is still revealing? The absence of those shenanigans. The same revealer that was there revealing the mind going, I'm not happy, I want this to be more. In other words, we're not producing anything new. If I'm producing, then you have every right to be excited. And it's going to genuinely produce a lot of happiness in you. But Vedanta is not about producing, it is about revealing the most obvious presence which was with you all the time. That's why it's not a big deal. It's not supposed to be. Okay? Now, next session, we will talk about how. Okay, look at this. Right now, you're kind of saying, okay, so suppose I say I am that awareness, and you say I am that awareness. And suppose you're connecting to my words. Now the next question comes, then how do I demonstrate that the awareness from this standpoint is exactly the same as awareness from this standpoint? Because if you have two awarenesses, then you're still a limited individual. Then there's no teaching here at all. So I have to show you how is it that your I am is exactly the same as my I am, as Buddha's I am, as Ramana Maharishi's I am, as a drunk person's I am, as a dog's I am. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.